Do you ever wonder about the time or the timing of your life? Why you live in the time that you do? How about where you live? Why do you live where you live? Why do you do the job that you do or act out in the context that you find yourself? Are these things that are just results of chance, or perhaps is there something more going on? Those are the questions I want you to consider today as we look into our passage in Daniel chapter 8, verses 1 and 2. Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Marquez, and this is the Baptist on the Bible podcast, and here is your 7 at 7 devotion, a 7-minute devotion from Scripture designed to encourage you at the beginning and end of your work week. Today we're starting a new series called Trying Times from Temporal Authority, and in this time this morning we'll look at verses 1 and 2 of Daniel chapter 8, and look at how God kind of pulls things together and holds things together, even in the midst of some authorities, temporal authorities that we face that might try to infringe upon our belief, infringe upon our freedoms to hold to our beliefs. So let's go ahead and read these verses together, and then we'll discuss it in more detail. Beginning at verse 1 of chapter 8, it says, "In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that had appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking, that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai." There you have it. May God bless the reading of His Word. Now, you might have heard those verses and saying, well, what can we really draw from that? You know, it's pretty minute, and we're just giving an introduction to a vision. But these introductions are very important because they reveal some things about God's sovereignty. And so what we see here is a couple things that we should note. We have the when and the where of the vision. And the when is important. It's the 3rd year of Belshazzar. Now, the vision comes to Daniel probably 2 years after his previous vision, about 550, and it's at the time that we believe Cyrus has finally established the Medo-Persian Empire. He's likely defeated Astyages of the Medes, who may have been his grandfather on his mother's side, but he has consolidated power between the Medes and the Persians, and it's going to be that power that ultimately overthrows the Babylonian Empire. So the when is important. Even though Daniel would have no knowledge really of what's going on way out in Medo-Persia necessarily, God is giving kind of a timestamp that something significant has happened that will result in something significant in the future. So we see that this is also in the city of Susa. We get the language in the New King James is Shushan, but it's the same as the city of Susa. This is 200 miles east of Babylon, and what's interesting is that this location will become the administrative capital of Persia. So what is Daniel doing in the middle of kind of nowhere for his concerns? This is not an important place for Babylon so much, but it's going to be the central location for the Persian government. So we see it's given at the time that the Persian government is established in a location that will become the citadel. And it's an important location. We see in Nehemiah 1:1 that it came to pass in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, I was in Shushan, the citadel. Esther 1:2 tells us that in those days, King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the citadel. And so we see that this location is important for other key people in the Bible, but it shows us that God is orchestrating things according to His purposes. And Babylon, their day in the sun is going to soon be over. So what do we learn about this? Again, time is important. We can't underestimate the reality that God actually governs in human affairs. Our God is not a God who created and walked away, but a God who is actually orchestrating all things out for His purposes. If God is sovereign over time, do you consider that you are living at a special time in history, that God purposely gave you life in this season of history? And of course, history is His story. So don't complain about the hardship that you're experiencing in the present or the difficulties that you're facing in your near future or even in your recent past. These things are designed in order to bring you to the place where you recognize God's control of your life and become usable within the time frame that God has established you. God is going to move at the right time even to bless you. So take consideration this week of God's reign over time. That should be bringing comfort even in the midst of hardship. God is also sovereign over space, right? He is not just sovereign over the time in which you live. He actually has brought you to where you live. And why do you find yourself even listening now where you are? You know, what city are you in? What country do you live in? And why has God placed you right there? Again, God has placed you there to impact His kingdom at that location. God is sovereign in your timing and in your location. It is not a random sequence of events that has brought you here today. So do you look at your life and see the hand of God? Sometimes it's really hard to accept that God's great sovereignty and just ultimate power, that he would have any concern for you and I. But you have to remember the words of Jesus. In Matthew 10:30, he says, "The very hairs of your head are all numbered." As we face difficult times, and temporal powers will try to challenge our ability to have faith, to exercise faith, even to speak of our faith, we find comfort in God's ultimate control over the timing and location of our life. I wanted to close with a story. Henry Norris Russell was a Princeton astronomer, and he would often give lectures. And one day he was lecturing on the Milky Way and how large it was. And a woman came to him after the lecture and was asking, if our world is so little and the universe is so great, can we believe that God pays any attention to us? Dr. Russell's reply was fantastic. He says, "That depends, madam, entirely on how big a God you believe in. Do you believe in a God big enough to care about the small things of your life?" I hope you do. It's encouraging as you go forward today. Remember that everything that happens to you today is known in the mind of God, and give him glory for that. Even the difficult things he will use to make you into the image of Christ. I hope you're encouraged. If you are encouraged, please take time to share this podcast or rate this podcast. If you're watching it on a video, you can if it's on a podcasting site, you can often rate it as well. Give it a 5-star rating if you would. May God bless you. Take care today.